All right, well, as we continue to try to understand the big picture of the Bible, we are continuing to look at the storyline of the Bible. And in this video, we're going to move into Act 3. Now, we started off looking at the first act, which is called Beginnings. And that's where we talked about how God created the whole world and He created a beautiful context in which we could enjoy relationship with Him as human beings. But then we messed it all up with our sin. And so we talked about how the rest of the Bible is God's process of restoring humanity back to Himself, restoring that relationship with Him. Then we moved into Act 2 and we saw how God began this process through the nation of Israel. He chose this nation to demonstrate what it's like to be in a relationship with Him. He made promises to them and offered a relationship with them. But unfortunately, we saw how Israel continually failed God. They continually rebelled against God. And in the last video, we looked at a couple thousand years of history where we saw this cycle of they were doing okay, but then they would fail. They do okay, and then they would fail. And we come to the close of the New Testament, and it's a fairly dark picture. God's people are far from Him. There is seemingly not a lot of hope. But that is when Act 3 comes onto the scene. And Act 3 is so significant because it is all about Jesus. And of all the acts in the Bible, this is the most significant because the coming of Jesus Christ is the most significant event in the history of the world. We can't overstate that fact. Jesus is the most singularly important event in history. All along, it looked as if history wasn't going to work out. It looked as if mankind was so messed up that we could never find our way back to God. But all along, God had a plan. And here's what it says in the book of Galatians, chapter 4 and verse 4. But when the fullness of time came, God sent forth His Son. It says that at just the right time, in God's perfect timing, when the fullness of time came, then God sent His Son, Jesus Christ, into the world. And that is what Act 3 is all about, the coming of Jesus Christ. Now, we learn about Jesus in 4 books of the Bible that are called the Gospels. Really, all of the Bible points to Jesus, but the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John specifically tell us about the person of Jesus Christ. So scene 1 in Act 3 is the person of Jesus. Now, the Gospels tell us the story of Jesus' life. They describe His activities, His miracles, His teachings, His interactions with people, and they describe His priorities. So as we read the Gospels, we really get a very great picture of the person of Jesus Christ. What was He like? What did He care about? What was important to Him? But as you look at all of these stories, there is one overriding truth that all of these stories are meant to point us to, and that's this, that Jesus is God. The whole story of His life is meant to point us in this direction to help us understand His true identity as God in the flesh. There's a great verse in the New Testament that gives us a picture of this. In the book of Philippians chapter 2, verses 6 and 7, talking about Jesus, it says this, though He was God, He did not think of His equality with God as something to cling to. Instead, He gave up His divine privileges and He took the humble position of a slave and was born as a human being. That verse is such a great picture of who Jesus Christ really is. He wasn't just a person. He wasn't just a normal human being. He was God. And yet He came to this world and he laid aside all of His rights and privileges as God, and He took on human flesh. He took on human form and He walked among us. And this is an incredibly important truth to understand, that Jesus was not an ordinary human being, that He was God in the flesh. He was God coming to this world. The whole story of the Bible hinges on the fact that Jesus is God. This is absolutely crucial to understand if you want to understand the person of Jesus Christ. So go ahead, why don't you pause now and talk about these questions.